Hey, tonight you're not in your bed. You're in a makeshift tent on the banks of the Nile around the year 1250 BC. The air is thick with a strange scent. It's the smell of dry salt, of fragrant resin, and of something else. Something ancient, something old. You think this work is sacred, that you're helping kings and pharaohs enter eternity? The truth is, you're shunned by all of society simply because you touch the dead. What lies beneath your hands isn't clay or wood. It's a human body, cold, still. And it's your job to remove its organs. By the end of our journey, you'll understand why preparing someone for the afterlife was such a worldly, lonely, and terrible job. By the way, what time is it where you are? I'd love to know where you're listening to this story from. And if you enjoy these quiet, deep dives into the past, maybe hit the subscribe button. It truly means more to me than you know. Now dim your screen. Let your body sink into your mattress. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. You're not in control anymore. You're in history. And history doesn't care if your hands are clean. You don't live in the city. You can't. Your work makes you ritually unclean, a necessary impurity that society keeps at a careful distance. Your home, if you can call it that, is the Wabbit, the place of purification. It's a temporary tent, or maybe a reed structure erected on the edge of the desert, deliberately positioned between the world of the living and the vast necropolis, the city of the dead. The ground here isn't paved with stone. It's just packed earth, cool and dusty beneath your bare feet. The furniture consists of low wooden tables, stained dark from years of work, and stone benches that are always cold to the touch. The air itself is an entity. It doesn't smell like the nearby village with its scents of baking bread and livestock. Here, the air is heavy with the sharp chemical bite of natron, the natural salt used to dry the bodies. It's a clean smell, almost like bleach, but it's so constant that it clings to the back of your throat. It's layered with the sweeter, heavier notes of myrrh and cedar oil resins meant to purify and sanctify. And beneath it all, faint but ever present, is the metallic, coppery scent of death. The only sounds are the whisper of the desert wind against the reed walls and the distant, mournful cries of desert birds. Your only companions are your fellow embalmers, the only people in the world who don't look at you with a mix of fear and disgust. You are a brotherhood of the shunned. Your lunch break is not an escape. You eat where you work. A helper brings a simple meal, a coarse flat loaf of bread, a few raw onions for flavor, and perhaps a piece of salted dried fish from the Nile. You eat with your hands, which despite endless washing, always feel stained. The bread tastes faintly of natron. The water you drink from a clay jug has a hint of resin. It's a bitter irony. In a few weeks, you will pack a tomb with offerings for the deceased, roasted duck figs, dates, honey cakes, and jugs of fine wine, a feast for their eternal journey. But for you, the living, the essential, your meal is this. It's enough to keep you alive, but not enough to make you forget the gnawing emptiness in your stomach. Hunger is a constant, quiet companion. Loneliness is the other. They sit with you on the cold stone bench, sharing your silent, tasteless meal. The weight you carry is heavier than any body. It's the weight of faith. Your work is not just a craft. It's a sacred and terrifying responsibility. Every single step is dictated by the gods, recorded in holy texts that only the priests can fully read. A lector priest stands nearby, chanting the correct spells, making sure every action is ritually pure. You, the craftsman, are not allowed to speak. You just listen and obey. You believe with every fiber of your being in the journey of the soul. You believe that Anubis, the jackal-headed god, is watching over your shoulder, judging your work. If you make the incision in the wrong place, if you misplace an organ, if you wrap a bandage in the wrong direction, you could sever a soul's connection to its body, damning it to an eternity of aimless wandering. This fear is far greater than any fear of handling the dead. The dead are peaceful. It is the fate of their souls and the judgment of the gods that haunts your every move. Just as you finish your last bite of bread, you hear a commotion outside. A procession. It's not the quiet, humble arrival of a farmer's family. This is different. There are more people, their mourning is more formal, and the goods they bring with the body are finer. They unwrap a new client and lay him on the table. Judging by the quality of the linen he's wrapped in and the ornate chest of belongings carried in behind him, you know this is no ordinary man. This was a scribe, a general, a nobleman, someone important. Instantly the air in the tent changes. The pressure multiplies. The lector priest's gaze becomes sharper. The family will expect perfection. The gods will demand it. Your quiet routine work has just become a high-stakes performance. It is going to be a very, very long night. The great official lies there on the low wooden table, motionless, silent. His silence has a different weight than the silence of the tent. It is the silence of a finished life, an absolute stillness that no living person could ever imitate. Your first task is always the same: purification. You and an assistant bring jars of water drawn from the sacred Nile. The water is cold. You dip a strip of linen into it, wring it out gently, and then you make the first touch. The skin of the dead is unlike anything else. It's cold, but it's not the cold of stone or metal. It's an organic cold, a coldness that once held life. It's soft, yet there's a strange firmness just beneath the surface where the muscles have begun to stiffen. You wipe gently down his arm, across his chest, down his legs. There is no reaction, not a flinch, not a sigh. His complete passivity makes your actions feel mechanical and mundane. You are bathing a powerful man, someone you likely wouldn't have dared to look in the eye just a few days ago. Now you are cleaning the spaces between his fingers, the creases of his skin. You see the small scars from his childhood, a mole on his shoulder, the markers of a life fully lived, details his own family might not have noticed. In this moment, you are closer to him than anyone. You use palm wine, a natural disinfectant, to wash the body again. Its sharp alcoholic scent cuts through the other smells in the air. This is a vital ritual meant to ensure the body is pure before the gods. But for you, it is also a practical job. You have to clean everything to remove all the dirt of mortal life. As you shave his hair and beard, you feel more like a barber than a ritualist. The bronze razor glides carefully. Everything must be perfect. Not a single nick. You work in silence, the only sounds being the soft scrape of the blade and the drip of water onto the packed earth floor. This first touch is a reminder. It reminds you that this was once a person, but it is also the beginning of the process of turning that person into a symbol, a vessel for a soul. You are slowly erasing the traces of his life to prepare him for a new one. And when you finish washing him, folding his hands across his chest, you know that the easiest part of your job is over. The most horrific part is about to begin. The body is pure. Now the air in the tent seems to thicken. The lector priest begins to speak, his voice a low, steady drone, reciting the ancient spells that fill the silence. This is the signal. It is time to perform the forbidden act to harm a sacred body. An assistant hands you the tool. It is not a finely crafted metal knife. It is a razor-sharp flake of obsidian carefully chipped into a blade. The Egyptians believed that metal was impure for certain rituals. Only stone was clean enough to make this first incision. Holding the obsidian flake, you feel its coldness and its sharp edge. It's surprisingly light, yet it carries the weight of a sin. You kneel beside the table by the official's left flank. The priest is still chanting his words, are the permission, the spiritual shield for what you are about to do. But that shield feels terribly thin. You take a deep breath, trying to steady your trembling hands. You have been chosen for this role, the one they call the slicer, a role no one ever wants. Your eyes focus on a single point. You know exactly where to cut. A single incision long enough to get your hand inside, but not clumsy. You press the point of the stone into the skin. It tenses, resisting for a brief moment, and then suddenly gives way. A dark red line appears instantly. There is no scream, no resistance, just the quiet tearing sound of flesh being parted. You draw the blade in one long, decisive motion. It is done. A doorway has been opened into the body. The moment the obsidian leaves the flesh, your performance begins. Ritually, your act is a desecration. To cleanse this sin, a play must be staged. The assistants begin to shout, cursing you. They will pick up small stones and symbolically throw them in your direction. Begone, sinner. You have defiled the deceased. You must flee the tent playing your part as the villain who has just committed his crime. You know it's only a ritual. You know they don't truly hate you. But as you stand alone outside in the desert heat, listening to the curses, the feeling of isolation is overwhelming. You are the one who performs the most necessary, most painful step on the journey to the afterlife. But to do it, you must accept being seen as a sinner. You are the sacrificial lamb, taking on the guilt so that others may continue their holy work with a clean conscience. You wonder, do the gods understand this sacrifice, or do they too see you only as the one who dared to wound a soul on its way to them? Your ritual exile is over. You return to the tent, the mock anger of your colleagues forgotten, and the work continues. The incision in the torso lies waiting, but that is not the next step. The next task is more delicate, more precise, and in many ways, far stranger. You move to the head of the table. An assistant hands you a different tool. It's a long, slender bronze rod, no thicker than a reed from the riverbank. At one end, it's curved into a small hook, like a shepherd's crook in miniature. It looks almost elegant, a tool for an artist or a scribe. Its purpose, however, is anything but. With the help of another embalmer, you tilt the official's head back slightly. You take the bronze hook and gently insert the tip into one of the nostrils. The journey inward is tight and resistant. You can feel the soft cartilage give way, and then the hard scrape of bone. You push further deeper, navigating by feel alone, a blind exploration into the core of the skull. You are aiming for a very specific, very thin sheet of bone that separates the nasal passage from the cranial cavity, the ethmoid bone. You find it. You brace yourself, adjust your grip on the rod, and give a short, sharp push. There's a sickening, grating crack, a sound that seems far too loud in the quiet tent. It's the sound of bone breaking. You have just punched a hole into his skull. Now the real work begins. You push the hook through the new opening and begin to whisk, back and forth, around and around. Your goal is not to pull the brain out whole. It is to liquefy it, to break it down into a thick, pulpy slurry with the consistency of porridge. The Egyptians believed the heart was the center of intelligence, personality, and soul. The brain to them was utterly useless. It was cranial stuffing, a meaningless organ to be disposed of with as little ceremony as possible. Once the contents of the skull have been sufficiently scrambled, you turn the body onto its side, letting much of the liquefied matter drain out through the nostril. It's a slow, messy process. What remains, you extract piece by piece with the hook. You pull out small, grayish-white chunks of tissue, dropping them into a simple pottery bowl. There is no special container for this. There are no prayers said. This material, which once held this man's every thought, his every memory, his love for his family, and his fear of the gods, is now just waste. It will be thrown out later, discarded on the desert sand, with the rest of the refuse from the embalming process. The work requires immense concentration. It's a strange, detached clinical procedure. You are not destroying a mind. You are simply cleaning a cavity. That is what you have to tell yourself, over and over again. As you scrape and pull, you are simply cleaning. The head is now empty, a hollowed-out vessel. You move back to the torso, back to the long, clean incision you made earlier. It is time to empty the body cavity. This part of the job is not precise or delicate. It is a messy, physical, and deeply invasive act. You reach your hand through the opening into the darkness of the man's chest. The warmth that should be there is long gone. Instead, it is cool and slick. You feel your way around your fingers, identifying the different shapes and textures of the organs by touch alone. You find the liver first heavy and dense, then the lungs spongy and light, the coiled rope-like intestines, and the sac of the stomach. One by one, you carefully detach them from the membranes that hold them in place and pull them out into the light. These are not discarded like the brain. These organs are essential for the afterlife. They are placed on a clean linen cloth where they are washed again with palm wine purifying them. While you do this, other workers bring forward 4 special containers. These are the canopic jars. They are beautifully made, often from calcite or pottery, and their lids are carved into the shapes of 4 distinct heads. They are sacred vessels, each protected by one of the 4 sons of the god Horus. Your next task is to place the correct organ into the correct jar. This is a moment of intense pressure. A mistake here would be a disaster. The lector priest watches your every move, his chanting a constant reminder of the stakes. You pick up the lungs first. These belong to Hapi, the baboon-headed god. You carefully place them inside his jar. Next, the stomach. This is for Duamutif, the son with the head of a jackal. You place it inside and set the lid firmly on top. The long, cleaned coils of the intestines are for Kabesenuef, the falcon-headed god, who will watch over them for eternity. Finally, the liver. This heavy vital organ is placed into the last jar, the one with a human head representing the god Imseti. 4 jars, 4 gods, 4 organs, all accounted for. As you work, you are acutely aware of the one organ you must not touch, the heart. It remains in its place alone in the now empty chest cavity. To the Egyptians, the heart was everything. It was the source of wisdom, of memory, of emotion, of the soul itself. In the afterlife, this heart would be weighed on a scale against the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth. If the heart was heavy with sin, it would be devoured by a monster, and the soul would cease to exist. Your job is to preserve the body, but your most important duty is to protect the heart. You work around it, clean around it, but never, ever remove it. The thought of accidentally damaging it sends a cold wave of fear through you that is far more chilling than the dead body you are touching. The jars are sealed. The body cavity is almost entirely empty. You take handfuls of linen, soaked in palm wine, and begin to clean the inside of the torso, wiping away the remnants of the life that was. As you work in this hollow space, your movements are slow, cautious, and deliberate. Because you are not truly alone in there, one thing remains: the heart. It rests in the center of the chest, a dense, silent muscle. While the other organs were important companions for the afterlife, the heart was the key. It was the record of the person's entire existence. Every good deed, every lie, every moment of kindness or cruelty, the Egyptians believed it was all catalogued within the heart. It was the seat of intelligence, the source of their personality, the very essence of their being. Your biggest fear as an embalmer is not the smell or the risk of disease. It is the fear of accidentally damaging the heart. A careless slip of a tool, a moment of distraction, could lead to a spiritual catastrophe beyond repair. Because this heart had a future appointment. In the Hall of Two Truths, the deceased would stand before the god Osiris. Their heart would be placed on one side of a great golden scale. On the other side, a single pure white ostrich feather, the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was light, balanced by a life of goodness, the person would be granted eternal life. But if the heart was heavy, weighed down by sin, the scale would tip. And a terrifying creature, a composite monster, named Ammit, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, would be waiting to devour it. To have your heart eaten by Ammit was the ultimate end, not just death, but total annihilation. Oblivion. And so you treat the heart with a reverence that borders on terror. You clean around it with the utmost care. Later in the process, a special amulet, the heart scarab, will be placed directly over it. Carved on the back of this stone beetle is a spell from the Book of the Dead, an appeal from the deceased directly to their own heart. O my heart, do not stand up against me as a witness. Do not oppose me in the tribunal. Do not create opposition against me in the presence of the keeper of the balance. They were so afraid of what their own heart might say about them that they tried to silence it with magic. And you are the guardian of that fragile, treacherous witness. The weight of that responsibility is heavier than any stone jar. The surgical part of your work is done. The body is now a hollow shell, cleaned and purified with wine. But it is still full of water, and water is the engine of decay. To grant this man eternal life, you must first fight a war against moisture. Your weapon is a mountain of salt. It's called natron, a naturally occurring salt harvested from the dry lake beds near the Nile. It's not like the fine salt you use for preserving fish. This is coarse, granular, and grayish-white, a harsh and thirsty mineral. You and your assistants temporarily pack the man's empty torso with bags of linen and more natron to help absorb moisture from within. Then you lift the body onto a special sloping table designed to let the fluids drain away, and you begin to bury him. Bag after bag, shovelful after shovelful, you pour the natron over him. It's heavy work. You build a mound of it covering every inch of his body until he has completely disappeared beneath a salty, white hill. The lector priest recites the appropriate spells, marking the beginning of a long and patient vigil. For the next 40 days, the body will lie here, and the natron will do its slow, silent work, drawing out every last drop of liquid from the skin, muscle, and bone. This is the long middle part of your job, and it has its own quiet miseries. Your workplace, the wabet, is constantly filled with natron. The air you breathe is dry and dusty with it. It leaves a salty chemical taste on the back of your tongue and irritates your lungs, giving you a persistent, rasping cough. Your hands suffer the most. You are always touching the salt, moving it, packing it. The natron leaches the moisture from your own skin, just as it does from the dead. Your hands are perpetually dry, the skin tight and chapped. The creases of your knuckles crack open into painful bleeding fissures that never seem to fully heal. Rinsing them with water provides a moment of relief, but the feeling is deceptive. As soon as they dry, the salt on your skin pulls even more moisture out, leaving them feeling drier than before. The 40 days are not a period of rest. While this nobleman lies buried in his salt bed, another body arrives. You perform the first touch, the cleansing cut, the removal of the brain. The Wobbit is a factory, and the product is eternity. The work never stops. The 40-day clock is just one of many timers you keep in your head. It's a constant background rhythm to your life, a slow countdown that marks the steady, patient transformation of a human body into a timeless effigy. The natron is your partner in this, a silent, thirsty collaborator in the fight against oblivion. After a day's work, you leave the Wobbit and walk towards the small cluster of huts where you and the other embalmers live. As you walk, you carry an invisible cloud with you. It is the smell of your trade, and it is a scent that never truly leaves you. It's a complex perfume. It's not just the smell of death. In fact, the sharp, sterile scent of natron salt does a good job of neutralizing the worst of that. The dominant note is the natron itself, a dry chemical sharpness that catches in your throat. But layered over that are the sacred and expensive aromas of the resins and oils you use. There is the deep earthy and slightly bitter scent of myrrh, and the sweet, woody, pine-like fragrance of frankincense. There is the strong, clean scent of cedar oil used to anoint the body, and the faint, lingering sourness of the palm wine used for cleaning. It is the smell of a temple. It is the smell of purification. But on you, it is the smell of contamination. This potent combination soaks into everything. It's in the fibers of your linen kilt. It's in your hair. It's in the pores of your skin. You can wash yourself in the Nile until your skin is raw, but the moment you dry off, the scent returns, rising from within you. It is your permanent personal atmosphere. When you have to go into the nearby village for supplies, this smell announces your arrival. The merchants smell you before they see you. Mothers pull their children away. Friends you grew up with suddenly find something interesting to look at on the other side of the street. They don't mean to be cruel, they are simply afraid. Your smell is a reminder of everything. They fear death, decay, and the unknown world that follows. You are a walking, talking ghost from the edge of their world, and your scent is the proof. The greatest irony is that the very substances that mark you as an outcast are among the most prized materials in all of Egypt. The resins you handle in bulk are burned as offerings to the gods in the grandest temples of Thebes. But when those same sacred scents are associated with your hands, the hands that touch the dead, they become a brand of impurity. After a while, you almost stop noticing it yourself. It's just the air you breathe. It is only when you see the look in someone else's eyes, a slight wrinkle of the nose, or a step taken backward, that you are reminded. The smell is the price of your skill. It is the scent of your solitude. The 40 days during which a body rests in its bed of natron are not a time of rest for you. This period is a strange lull, a quiet, industrious pause between the wet, messy work of evisceration and the final, intricate art of wrapping. The silence in the Wobbit is different now. It's the sound of patient preparation. Your primary task during this time is to prepare the thousands of feet of linen bandages that will be needed. A single mummy can require hundreds of square meters of linen. You spend your days sorting and preparing the fabric. Some of it is fine new linen reserved for the outer layers, but much of it is recycled, brought by the family of the deceased, old clothing. Old bed sheets, household fabrics that carry the faint scent of a life already lived. There's a strange intimacy to this. You handle the very cloths that once adorned this person's home, and soon you will use them to adorn their eternal body. You sit for hours tearing the cloth into strips of varying widths. You need wide pieces like shrouds for the main parts of the body. You need medium strips for the arms and legs. And you need delicate ribbon-thin strips, barely the width of your finger, for the painstaking work of wrapping each individual finger and toe. The pile of white linen grows day by day, a testament to the immense amount of labor that is still to come. This is also the time to prepare the magical protection. You take inventory of the amulets. These small charms, made of faience carnelian or lapis lazuli, are essential for a safe journey through the underworld. You lay them out on a clean cloth. The jed pillar for stability, the ankh, the symbol of life itself, the powerful eye of Horus for healing and protection, and of course, the all-important heart scarab. Each must be accounted for and ready to be placed within the wrappings at the precise, ritually designated locations. You also prepare the resins, the sacred glue that will hold everything together. You might spend an afternoon grinding solid chunks of myrrh into a fine powder or gently heating frankincense with oil to create a thick, sticky paste. The air becomes heavy with these holy scents, a purposeful act of consecrating the very materials you will use. This work is methodical, almost meditative. It's a stark contrast to the visceral hands-on work that came before. But always in the background of your mind, the clock is ticking. You glance at the silent, salt-covered mounds, knowing that beneath them a profound transformation is taking place. This long wait is simply the quiet intake of breath before the final complex exhale of your craft. Most of the bodies that arrive at the Wabbit are strangers. They are the wealthy, from the city officials, from the court people, far removed from your humble life on the edge of the desert. This distance is a mercy. It allows you to be a craftsman, a technician. It allows you to see the body as a vessel, a sacred project, and not as a person. But sometimes that mercy is denied. One afternoon, a small, humble procession arrives. There are no grand displays of mourning, just the quiet, heavy grief of a simple family. They lay the body on the receiving table, and when they pull back the cloth from his face, your heart stops. You know him. Perhaps he was a neighbor, a fellow outcast who lived in the hut next to yours. Perhaps he was a distant cousin. You remember his laugh. You remember seeing him just a week ago complaining about the heat or the price of grain. And now he is your client. Suddenly, the work is no longer routine. Every procedure becomes a personal torment. Your hands, which know the motion so well, hesitate. The first touch is not the cold skin of a stranger, it is the hand that once shared bread with you. When the time comes for the cleansing cut, you feel like a butcher, a violator of a trust. The thought of taking the brain hook to this man whose jokes and stories you remember feels like an unforgivable act of brutality. All the professional detachment you have carefully built over the years crumbles. You look at his still face, and you don't see a vessel for the afterlife. You see your friend. You see the tired lines around his eyes, the scar on his chin from a childhood fall. Memories flood your mind, making it almost impossible to concentrate on the sacred task at hand. But you must. Your personal grief is a luxury you cannot afford. His soul's journey to the Hall of Two Truths depends on your skill. A mistake made through grief is just as catastrophic as one made through carelessness. So you push your sorrow down, transforming it into a sharp, painful focus. You channel your grief into perfection. Every line you cut is more precise. Every organ is handled with an almost painful reverence. When it comes time to wrap the body, every strip of linen is pulled tighter, smoother, more securely than ever before. You are not just preserving a body, you are shepherding the soul of your friend. It is the last and greatest service you can possibly offer him. You owe him your absolute best, no matter how much it tears you apart. When the work is finally done, there is no sense of professional satisfaction. There is only a profound, hollow exhaustion, and a scar that you will carry long after the smell of myrrh and natron has faded from your hands. The 40-day vigil has ended. The long, patient work of the natron salt is complete. Now the time has come to bring the body back into the light. You and your assistants approach the silent white mound on the embalming table. There is no ceremony to this part, just labor. You take shovels and brushes and begin the arduous task of removing the mountain of salt. The natron is heavy now, laden with the moisture it has drawn from the body. It is discolored, stained a brownish yellow, and carries a strange, dry, vaguely organic smell. It is no longer pure. It has fulfilled its purpose, and is now just waste to be disposed of far away in the desert. As the last layers of salt are brushed away, the body is revealed. The sight is always startling, no matter how many times you have seen it. The transformation is profound. The once plump official is gone, replaced by a shrunken, skeletal figure. The skin, now a dark, leathery brown, is stretched taut over the bones. The eyes are sunken into the skull, the lips pulled back in a permanent, lipless grimace. The body is incredibly light, having lost more than half its original weight. It is a desiccated husk, a dry and brittle effigy of the man it once was. It looks ancient, as if it has already lain in a tomb for 1,000 years. Your job now is not one of destruction, but of reconstruction. You must take this fragile, shrunken form and restore its humanity, its dignity, and its eternal shape. First, the body must be cleaned. You wash it gently with water to remove the last of the salt crystals, then carefully dry it. The skin is brittle and must be handled with extreme care. Then begins the anointing. You take jars of expensive cedar oil, myrrh, and other fragrant sacred oils, and begin to massage them gently into the dry skin. This is not to make it soft again, that is impossible, but to give it suppleness, to prevent it from cracking and breaking during the wrapping. It's also a ritual purification, the oils forming a barrier against the outside world. The tent fills with the rich, holy scents. While you anoint the skin, others are busy inside the empty body cavity. It is packed tightly with fresh linen sawdust and bags of spices like cinnamon and myrrh, not only to absorb any remaining moisture, but more importantly to restore the body's shape. You are giving the hollow shell its substance back, recreating the contours of a living person. Now begins the most intricate and time-consuming task of all the wrapping. This is the true art of your trade. You begin with the smallest, most difficult parts, the fingers and toes. You take the thinnest strips of linen, barely ribbons, and carefully wrap each individual digit. It is a slow, painstaking process that requires immense patience and dexterity. Each finger is a miniature mummy in itself. You do this so that the deceased will be able to use their hands and feet in the afterlife. Once the digits are done, you move to the hands and feet, then the arms and legs, wrapping each limb separately. The goal is to maintain the distinct human form. If you were to simply wrap the entire body in one go, it would become a featureless cocoon. By wrapping each part separately, you preserve the person's identity. As you build the layers, another critical task begins. The lector priest, who has been watching silently, now begins to chant specific spells from the Book of the Dead. At his direction, you place the prepared amulets between the layers of linen. A wadjet eye is placed against the cheek to allow the deceased to see. A jed pillar is laid along the spine to give him stability and the power of resurrection. Between the layers, you pour a thick, dark, sticky liquid heated resin. This sacred glue serves multiple purposes. It seals the bandages, making them waterproof and protecting the body from insects and moisture. It also hardens as it cools, creating a rigid protective shell around the fragile body. The air grows thick with the hot tar-like smell of the resin mingling with the sweeter scents of the oils. The layers build one on top of the other, each one consecrated with spells and sealed with resin. You wrap the torso, paying special attention as you cross the chest where the heart lies. Here, you place the large, heavy heart scarab, its flat inscribed bottom, resting directly against the bandages over the heart, a final magical failsafe for the day of judgment. Finally, you wrap the head, carefully cocooning it in a thick layer of linen. The body is now completely encased. The final step is to envelop it in a large shroud, a single large piece of linen, often painted with the image of Osiris, god of the underworld. This shroud is secured with several thicker bands of linen tied expertly around the body. The process is complete. Where a shrunken husk once lay, there is now a pristine, white, human-shaped form. You have not just wrapped a body, you have built an eternal house for a soul. The linen and resin provide the physical shell, the house for the soul. But the journey that soul is about to undertake is fraught with peril. The underworld, the Duat, is not a peaceful kingdom. It is a treacherous landscape of 12 hours or 12 gates, each one guarded by terrifying demons and monsters with names like He Who Lives on Snakes and Blood Drinker from the Slaughterhouse. To pass them, the soul needs more than a preserved body. It needs magic. It needs an arsenal. The amulets you place within the mummy's wrappings are that arsenal. They are not merely good luck charms or decorations. They are divine weapons, keys, and shields, each imbued with a specific power activated by the priest's ancient words. Your role in this part of the process is that of a magical armorer. You are equipping a spiritual warrior for the most important battle of their existence. The responsibility is immense. Forgetting an amulet or placing it in the wrong location would be like sending a soldier into battle without his shield or sword. The most crucial of all these items is the heart scarab. You spend more time on its placement than on any other. Made of a dark green or black stone like serpentine, it represents the sacred scarab beetle Khepri, the god of the rising sun and rebirth. Its power lay in the inscription on its flat underside, a direct copy of Chapter 30b from the Book of the Dead. As you place it over the heart, the priest's voice gives the spell its power, speaking for the deceased, commanding his own heart. O my heart which I had from my mother, O my heart of different ages, do not stand up as a witness against me. And it is a desperate magical plea to prevent the man's own conscience from betraying him during his final judgment. You press it firmly into the warm resin, sealing the spell in place, a final lock on a potentially treacherous witness. Next in importance is the Jed pillar. This strange object, resembling a column with 4 horizontal bars at the top, is one of the most ancient symbols in Egyptian religion. It represents the backbone of the god Osiris himself. After Osiris was murdered and dismembered by his brother Set, his spine was the first part to be re-erected by his wife Isis, symbolizing his eventual resurrection. By placing this amulet along the mummy's own spine, you are directly invoking the power of Osiris's triumph over death. You are magically bestowing upon the deceased the promise of stability, endurance, and rebirth. It is the architectural support of their new eternal life. On the upper chest, you place the tayyet, also known as the knot of Isis. Visually, it looks like a looped knot of cloth and is the direct counterpart to the Jed pillar. If the Jed is the masculine principle of Osiris, the tayyet is the feminine protective principle of his wife, the great goddess of magic Isis. Often made of red stone like carnelian or red jasper, symbolizing the life-giving blood of the goddess. This amulet acts as a blanket of divine protection. It wraps the deceased in the unconditional magical protection of the most powerful goddess, who, according to myth, pieced her husband back together and protected her son Horus. Placing it is like asking the Divine Mother to watch over this soul on its dangerous journey. And then there is the Wadjet, the Eye of Horus. This is perhaps the most famous of all the amulets. You place it against the mummy's wrapped cheek, or within the layers near the head. The myth is one of violent conflict. Horus, the son of Osiris, fought his uncle Set to avenge his father. In the battle, Set tore out Horus's eye, ripped it to pieces, and cast it away. The god of wisdom. Thoth painstakingly found the pieces and magically reassembled the eye, making it whole and more powerful than before. Thus, the Wadjet eye is the ultimate symbol of healing, restoration, protection, and wholeness. It wards off evil and ensures that whatever has been broken can be made complete again. You are not just giving the mummy an eye to see with, you are giving it a powerful magical shield against all harm. These, along with dozens of smaller amulets, the Ankh for life, the Shen ring for eternity, falcons for speed, and serpents for protection, are meticulously placed, each with its own prayer, each a vital piece of spiritual armor for the dark road ahead. For hours, even days, you have toiled to create a perfect eternal form. The body is wrapped. The amulets are sealed in their magical positions. The resin has hardened into a solid carapace. But the result is an anonymous, featureless white cocoon. It has a human shape, but it has no face, no identity. The final, and perhaps most profound act of transformation is to give the mummy its face back. This is the role of the death mask. The placing of the mask is the moment the mummy ceases to be a preserved corpse and becomes a divine image, an icon of the resurrected person. For a nobleman like the one you have been working on, the mask would likely be made of cartonnage. This was a kind of ancient papier-mâché crafted from layers of linen scraps or papyrus glued together and coated in a smooth layer of gesso, a type of plaster. This creates a light but rigid shell, a perfect canvas. You would have seen the mask makers at work in their own workshops, sculpting and painting these faces long before they were needed. The face they created was not a true-to-life portrait. Realism was not the goal. Perfection was. The mask presents an idealized version of the deceased. The face is always serene and youthful, regardless of the person's age at death. The eyes are large and almond-shaped, outlined in black kohl, staring forward into eternity. The lips are set in a faint, placid smile. This was the face the soul would wear forever in the afterlife, a face free from the worries, wrinkles, and flaws of mortal life. The skin is painted a reddish ochre for a man or a paler yellow-white for a woman. Conventional colors representing their roles. A stylized wig is painted black or dark blue, and a decorative beaded collar is often painted around the neck. Before the mask is placed, a final ritual is performed. The lector priest approaches and recites spells intended to open the eyes and mouth of the mask itself, magically giving it the power to see and speak on behalf of the deceased. You then lift the surprisingly lightweight mask. It feels fragile in your hands, a hollow shell of a face. You are the last person to look upon the wrapped, featureless head of the mummy. Then you carefully lower the mask into place. The fit is perfect. Suddenly, the anonymous bundle has a name. It has an identity. It is no longer just the body. It is the official reborn into his perfect, eternal form. The transformation is startling and immediate. An object of clinical procedure has become an object of sacred art. Your mind drifts to the stories you have heard about the masks of the pharaohs. For a king, the mask was not made of humble cartonnage, but of solid gold. Gold, the flesh of the gods, a material that never tarnished or decayed, the ultimate symbol of eternity. You imagine handling a mask, like Tutankhamun's, weighing as much as a small child, its surface gleaming with the divine light of the sun. You picture the details you've only heard about in whispers, the stripes of the Nem's headdress, made from deep blue lapis lazuli, the vulture and the cobra, symbols of Upper and Lower Egypt, rearing from the brow, the long plaited ceremonial beard of a god. To place such a mask would be terrifying. The sheer value of the materials would be staggering, but the spiritual weight would be even greater. You would be placing the face of a god onto the body of your king, the final seal on his divinity. But even with this painted cartonnage mask, the feeling is profound. It is the final act of your service. You have taken a man, dismantled him, purified him, preserved him, and rebuilt him. Now you have given him his face, the face he will present to Osiris at the gate of the afterlife. You step back and look at your work. The still, calm, smiling face stares back at you, seeing nothing and everything. Your job is done. The person is gone, and in his place stands an immortal, silent statue. The body is now complete, a perfect vessel, sealed within its linen and resin shell. Its face, an idealized mask of serene immortality. But it is a silent, inert object. It can be preserved for 10,000 years, but it is useless if the soul within cannot eat, drink, speak, or see. The final and most vital rite of passage is not performed by you, but by a high-ranking Sem priest, often one of the deceased's own sons. This is the opening of the mouth ceremony, and you are merely a silent background assistant in this profound religious drama. It is the magical act that reanimates the mummy, bridging the gap between the world of the dead and the world of the living one last time. The ceremony takes place at the entrance to the tomb, the house of eternity. The completed mummy is stood upright, supported by you or another embalmer. The family is gathered, their formal mourning now turning to hopeful anticipation. The Sem priest, often wearing a leopard skin robe that signifies his high office, begins the long and complex ritual. It is a performance with up to 75 distinct episodes, a litany of spells, offerings, and symbolic actions. His goal is to awaken the five senses of the deceased. He is not just waking up a body, he is reactivating a person. He holds a series of ritual instruments. The most important is an adze, a woodworking tool with a curved blade. He touches the mummy's mouth with the adze, while the lector priest chants the powerful words, "I open your mouth for you, that you may speak with it." The gesture is repeated, a symbolic prying open of the sealed lips, so that the deceased can recite the magical spells needed to navigate the underworld and to speak their name in the Hall of Judgment, declaring their innocence. Without a voice, they are lost. The priest then uses other instruments, including a serpent-headed tool called a pesishkaf, to touch the eyes, the ears, and the nose. "I open your eyes for you, that you may see with them. I open your ears that you may hear." As an embalmer, you stand there holding the mummy steady, and you are invisible. Your work was the gritty, profane, hands-on labor. This is the pure, sacred work of magic. You watch the priest, a man of a higher class, a man who would never touch an unpurified corpse, perform the clean, final act. There is a gulf between your role and his. You did the dirty work so that he could perform this beautiful, clean magic. You prepared the instrument, he plays the music. A wave of conflicting feelings washes over you. There is a sense of pride seeing your work become the vessel for such a powerful ritual. Your craftsmanship has made this moment possible. But there is also the familiar sting of your station. You are essential, but you are not celebrated. You are the foundation, but you are not the spire. The ceremony continues with offerings. A calf is slaughtered, and its forelegs, still warm, is presented to the mummy's mouth, a potent symbol of life and strength. Piles of food and drink, bread, beer, wine, foul vegetables are laid before the statue, their essence meant to be consumed by the reawakened spirit. Incense is burned, the smoke spiraling up to the gods, carrying the prayers of the family. The air is thick with chanting, with the smell of incense and cooked meat, and with the palpable hope of the grieving family. They desperately need to believe that their father, their husband, their brother, is not gone, but has merely begun a new phase of existence. Finally, the last spell is spoken. The priest declares the ceremony a success. The mummy is now a Sa, a glorified spirit fully equipped for eternity. Your role is over. You help the tomb workers carry the mummy into the dark burial chamber and place it within its sarcophagus. As the heavy stone lid is lowered, you feel a sense of finality unlike any before. Your hands have touched every part of this man, inside and out. You have known his body more intimately than his own wife. You have guided him through the liminal space between life and death. And now you leave him in the dark alone to begin his true journey. You seal the tomb and walk back out into the blinding Egyptian sun, your job truly, finally complete. Not every Egyptian could afford the grand performance you have just completed for the nobleman. The elaborate process, the finest oils, hundreds of yards of linen, a complete set of amulets, a painted cartonnage mask, and the services of a whole team of priests and embalmers was the ancient equivalent of a state funeral. It was reserved for the 1% royalty, high officials, and the vastly wealthy. But the promise of the afterlife was not just for the rich. Every Egyptian, down to the humblest farmer, yearned for an eternal existence and believed that some form of bodily preservation was necessary to achieve it. Your workshop, therefore, had different tiers of service. You were a master of the deluxe package, but you were also proficient in the economy options. When the family of a poor farmer arrived carrying the body of their loved one wrapped in a simple reed mat, the transaction was very different. There were no chests of goods, no entourage of mourners. There was only a small payment, perhaps a few sacks of grain, a goat, or a promise of future labor. And for this they received a much abbreviated but hopefully effective form of mummification. The Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt, described these cheaper methods. The first option was a shortcut that skipped the messy evisceration. Instead of making the incision and removing the organs by hand, you would use a large syringe-like tool to inject a caustic liquid cedar oil into the abdomen through the anus. The body was then plugged and left for a number of days. The oil was said to be so powerful that it would dissolve the stomach and intestines from the inside out. When the time was up, the plug was removed and the liquefied organs would drain out with the oil. It was a crude internal cleansing. The body was then packed in natron for the required number of days, just like the nobleman. But the difference in care was immense. There was no anointing with expensive oils afterward, no painstaking wrapping of individual fingers. The body was simply wrapped in a few sheets of coarse linen or whatever cloth the family could provide. There were no secret amulets placed within the layers, no painted mask to restore the face. The result was a simple, bundled shape, a preserved human form, but one without the magical armor or idealized identity of the wealthy. You felt a pang of pity. You knew the journey through the Duat was perilous. To send a soul on that journey so poorly equipped felt like sending a child into a storm with no cloak. But you did what you were paid to do. It was better than nothing. The cheapest method was for those who could afford almost nothing at all. Herodotus describes it as a simple purging of the intestines with an infusion, followed by the standard 40-day preservation in natron. This was the most basic package, a dried-out salted body. This was little more than an artificially enhanced version of what the desert itself could do. Before the invention of mummification, the earliest Egyptians were buried in simple, shallow pits in the sand. The hot, dry desert sand would naturally desiccate the bodies, creating accidental mummies. This most basic embalming technique was merely a more reliable way of achieving that natural outcome. Working on these poorer clients was a different experience. The religious pressure was less intense. There was no high priest scrutinizing your every move. The work was faster, less demanding of your artistic skill, but it was also less satisfying. There was no pride in the perfect wrapping, no awe at the placement of the mask. It was a purely functional, almost industrial process. It was a stark and constant reminder of the rigid hierarchy of Egyptian society. Your station in life determined your station in death. The quality of your eternity was directly proportional to the size of your wallet. While the nobleman would feast in the field of reeds, you feared this poor farmer might struggle to even pass the first gate of the underworld. You would say a silent personal prayer for him, a small unauthorized blessing, hoping that the gods in their wisdom might value a good heart over a golden mask. Your profession offers a unique form of job security. Your client base is, after all, eternal. But that security comes at a steep price paid daily with your own health and well-being. The waybet is a dangerous place to work, filled with hazards, both seen and unseen. The physical toll of the job accumulates over the years, a slow erosion of your body that mirrors the preservation of others. The most immediate danger is infection. You work with sharp instruments, obsidian flakes, bronze knives, and hooks, and you are constantly reaching into unsterilized body cavities. A small cut on your hand, easily ignored in another profession, can be a death sentence here. You are directly exposing your own bloodstream to the bacteria and diseases that may have been present in the deceased. You might be working on the body of someone who died from a plague, a fever, or a festering wound. While you have a certain resilience built up over years of exposure, you have seen colleagues sicken and die from a small infected nick on their finger. Every time you handle a sharp tool, a part of your mind is acutely aware of the invisible dangers lurking on its edge. Then there are the chemical hazards. Your constant companion is natron. You breathe its fine, salty dust all day long. It dries out your sinuses and lungs, leading to a chronic hacking cough that everyone in your profession seems to develop. In the long term, this constant irritation could lead to more serious lung ailments. Your hands are a testament to the salt's power. They are perpetually cracked and dry, the skin split into painful fissures that sting relentlessly when touched by more salt. You also work with other substances. The resins you heat and melt into a liquid glue release thick, pungent smoke. While it smells sacred, inhaling this smoke for hours every day cannot be good for you. You are, in essence, slowly pickling yourself from the inside out. The physical labor itself is grueling. Embalming is not a delicate, sedentary art. It involves heavy lifting, moving bodies onto tables, carrying heavy jars of water and wine, and shoveling hundreds of pounds of natron. Your back aches constantly, from bending over the low embalming tables for hours on end. Your knees protest from the long periods of kneeling required for the detailed wrapping. Over the years, your spine begins to curve, your joints swell, and a permanent ache settles deep into your bones. You are giving eternal rest to others by sacrificing your own. Beyond the immediate physical dangers, there is a psychological toll. You exist in a world saturated with death. While others see death as a singular, terrifying event for you, it is a daily, mundane reality. You become desensitized to things that would horrify other people. The sight of a dead body, the feel of a cold organ, the smell of decay, these things become normal. This creates a psychological gulf between you and the rest of society. You can never truly share your daily experience with anyone outside your profession. They would recoil in horror. This forced silence and emotional isolation can be just as damaging as any physical ailment. You carry the ghosts of all the bodies you have ever worked on, not as spirits that haunt you, but as a quiet weight in your memory, a silent library of the dead that only you can read. Your work may grant immortality to your clients, but it undoubtedly shortens and saddens your own life. Of all the hardships of your job, the heaviest is not a physical one. It is the profound and inescapable loneliness. You are a paradox. You perform one of the most sacred and essential services for society. Yet you are utterly ostracized by it. Your skill is revered, but your person is reviled. This is the central painful truth of your existence. Your impurity is not a matter of hygiene. It is a matter of theology. By touching the dead, you become ritually unclean, or BIU. This state of being contaminated is not something you can wash off at the end of the day. It clings to you like your shadow. It means you are barred from entering the great temples. While the rest of the kingdom celebrates the festivals of Amun-Ra or Hathor, you must remain outside an observer of a faith that you serve, but cannot fully participate in. You hear the chanting and the music from a distance forever on the wrong side of the temple walls. You prepare souls for the gods, but you cannot approach the gods yourself. This isolation extends to every part of your daily life. You live apart from the main village in a small community inhabited only by other embalmers, coffin makers, and tomb workers. The Necropolis Guild, a fraternity of the unclean. When you must walk into town, the reaction is immediate and universal. The path clears before you. Conversations stop mid-sentence. People turn their heads, avoiding your gaze. Mothers grab their children's hands and pull them close, whispering warnings. It is not necessarily born of malice, but of a deep, instinctual fear. You are a physical reminder of mortality, a specter of death walking in the bright sunlight. Your presence disrupts the careful illusion of normal life. This shunning has practical consequences. Some merchants may hesitate to take coins directly from your hand, asking you to place them on the counter instead. No one will share a cup of beer with you at the local tavern. You are never invited into a family's home for a meal. The loneliness is most acute in matters of the heart. Finding a spouse is difficult. You are most likely to marry the daughter of another embalmer, someone who understands and accepts the taint of your profession. Your children, too, will carry the stigma. They will be shunned at the village playground, called names, and taught from a young age that they are different. Your profession becomes a hereditary sentence of isolation. The psychological weight of this is immense. You crave normal human interaction, a simple conversation about the weather that isn't tainted by fear, a friendly touch that isn't followed by a ritual cleansing. You see families laughing together and feel a profound sense of being outside a world you can see but never join. At times, a bitter resentment can fester. You serve them all from the pharaoh down to the nobleman. You give their loved ones the greatest gift imaginable, a chance at eternity. And in return, they give you their backs. You learn to live with it. You build a wall around your heart, finding companionship only among your fellow outcasts who share your strange fate. You find solace in the pride of your work, in the quiet, focused, intricate craft that no one else dares to do. Your loneliness becomes a part of your identity, a silent vow of separation that your sacred dirty work demands. You belong more to the city of the dead you serve than to the city of the living that shuns you. You are surrounded by death, but you are also surrounded by wealth. The tombs you help prepare are not just graves, they are treasure houses for the afterlife. A wealthy nobleman is buried with everything he might need or want in the field of reeds, fine furniture, jewelry, of gold and lapis lazuli, jars of expensive wine and honey, and sometimes even gold coins. And you, the humble embalmer, are one of the last people to have access to it all. You know exactly what is being placed in the tomb and where. This knowledge is a heavy burden, for it comes with a terrible and persistent temptation. Your life is one of poverty. You are paid in rations, bread, beer oil, enough to live on, but never enough to prosper. Your hands are chapped and sore from working with natron, while the hands of the man you are preserving are adorned with gold rings and bracelets. You spend months preparing his body for a luxurious eternity, while your own children might go to bed hungry. The contrast is stark, a daily reminder of the vast gulf between your life and theirs. It is in these moments of quiet desperation that the whispers begin in your mind. The temptation is strongest with the small things. As you are wrapping the mummy, you handle dozens of amulets. Who would notice if one small carnelian charm, no bigger than your thumbnail, were to slip into your pocket? It would be so easy. Just a slight movement of the hand while the lector priest is busy with his texts. That one small amulet could be traded for enough grain to feed your family for a month, or perhaps a ring. As you wrap the fingers one by one, you could slide a gold ring off, replacing it with the linen bandages. In the darkness of the tomb, would anyone ever know? The thought is intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. You know the consequences of being caught. Tomb robbery is one of the most heinous crimes an Egyptian can commit. It is not just theft. It is a profound act of sacrilege. It is dooming a soul to hardship in the afterlife by stealing their provisions. The punishment is horrifically severe. Impalement on a sharpened stake is a common sentence, or torture followed by being burned alive, a punishment that not only ends your mortal life, but also destroys your body, ensuring you have no hope of an afterlife yourself. You have seen it happen. You have seen the bodies of captured tomb robbers displayed as a gruesome warning. The fear of this fate is a powerful deterrent. And so you are caught in a constant silent war with yourself. It is a battle between your desperate need and your profound fear. It's also a battle with your conscience. Despite your lowly station, you are a devout man. You believe in Ma'at, in justice and balance. You believe in the sacredness of the soul's journey. To steal from the dead would be to betray your own faith, to endanger your own soul when your day of judgment comes. How could you stand before Osiris, your heart heavy with the sin of having robbed one of his charges? Most days, your fear and your faith win out. You push the tempting thoughts away and focus on your work, your hands remaining honest. You find pride in your integrity, a small, cold comfort that you are better than the thieves who plunder the tombs in the dead of night. But the temptation never truly goes away. It lurks in the shadows of the workshop, a constant whisper promising an easier life at the cost of your own soul. Some of your colleagues, you suspect, have given in. You see them with a little extra food, a new tool they couldn't possibly afford. You say nothing. You see nothing. In this dangerous profession, it is best to focus only on your own work and your own internal battle. Your craft is one of creating an ideal, perfect form for eternity. The goal is a complete, whole body, a perfect vessel for the soul to recognize and inhabit. But the raw material you work with is often far from perfect. Life in ancient Egypt was brutal, and people died in countless violent ways. You do not always receive a peaceful, intact body on your embalming table. Sometimes you are presented with a true challenge, a test of not just your embalming skill, but your ability to reconstruct and recreate. A soldier might be brought from a distant battlefield, his body bearing the terrible wounds of combat, a crushed skull from a mace, a gaping hole in his chest from a spear. A stonemason might be delivered from the quarries, his limbs mangled from a rockfall. A fisherman might be pulled from the Nile days after drowning, his body swollen with water and partially eaten by crocodiles. These are the cases that test the limits of your art. Your job is not just to preserve what is there, but to repair what is broken. For a body with missing limbs, you become a sculptor. You must fashion new artificial limbs. These are typically made from wood and padded with linen, carefully shaped to match the original. You then attach them to the body before the wrapping begins, securing them so they appear to be a natural part of the whole. The wrapping itself becomes a form of artistic concealment, the layers of bandages hiding the seam between real flesh and artificial limb, creating the illusion of a complete body. For gaping wounds, your task is more akin to that of a tailor. You use coarse linen thread and bronze needles to stitch the terrible gashes closed. You pack the wound with linen soaked in resin to fill the cavity and provide structure before you sew the skin shut. The goal is to make the body appear as whole and unmarred as possible. The most challenging cases are those of extreme decomposition or physical damage. If a face is crushed or badly decayed, you must use all your skill to remodel it. You might use balls of linen packed into the cheeks to restore their shape, or a piece of wood to support a broken nose. You become a mortuary cosmetician, using resin and linen like clay to sculpt a semblance of the original human face before the wrapping and the mask cover your work. It is a desperate attempt to restore an identity that has been almost entirely erased by violence or decay. This work is psychologically taxing. It is one thing to handle a peaceful, intact body. It is another thing entirely to confront the brutal realities of a violent death. You are forced to look at the worst things that can happen to a human body, and then, with your bare hands, try to reverse them. There is a deep sadness to this work. You are keenly aware of the suffering this person must have endured in their final moments. Yet, there is also a profound sense of purpose. You are giving this person their humanity back. You are taking a broken, mangled corpse and transforming it into a dignified, peaceful form ready to meet the gods. You are erasing the evidence of their violent end, replacing it with a quiet image of eternal rest. It is a final act of compassion for a complete stranger, a way of imposing order and peace onto the chaos and horror of their death. In these moments, you are more than an embalmer. You are a restorer, an artist, and in a small way, a healer. Your work is not limited to human beings. The Egyptians' belief in the afterlife and their reverence for the gods extended deep into the animal kingdom. The gods themselves often took animal form. Horus as a falcon, Anubis as a jackal, Sobek as a crocodile, Bastet as a cat. To honor these gods, and sometimes to allow beloved pets to join their owners in the afterlife, animals were mummified in staggering numbers. Your workshop, therefore, frequently deals with non-human clients. This is by far the strangest part of your job. One day, you might be working on a nobleman. The next, you are presented with a basket of 50 cats. Cats were sacred to the goddess Bastet, the protector of the home and a goddess of fertility and joy. Across Egypt, great temples dedicated to her were home to thousands of cats cared for by priests. When these cats died, they were brought to you for mummification. The process was a simplified version of the human one. The cats were eviscerated through a small incision, dried in natron, and then wrapped in intricate patterns of linen. Sometimes their faces were detailed with paint on the bandages, or they were given tiny cartonnage masks. Millions upon millions of cats were mummified in this way, sold to pilgrims, who would then offer them to the temple as a sign of their devotion. Working on them was a surreal industrial process, an assembly line of feline mummies. Then there were the crocodiles. The fearsome god, Sobek, was worshipped in the form of the Nile crocodile. In his temple, cities' sacred crocodiles were kept in pools adorned with jewelry and fed the finest cuts of meat. When one of these divine beasts died, some of them growing to immense sizes, they were brought to you. Mummifying a 16-foot-long crocodile is a monumental undertaking. It requires a vast amount of natron, hundreds of yards of linen, and the combined strength of your entire team. The process is the same in principle, but vastly different in scale. Reaching into the body cavity of a crocodile is a journey into a reptilian cavern. Wrapping its immense armored body is like trying to wrap a small boat. These crocodile mummies were then interred in their own special catacombs, an army of scaly gods resting in the dark. The variety is endless. You have mummified ibises and falcons sacred to Thoth and Horus, their long beaks and delicate wings requiring a unique wrapping technique. You have worked on dogs and jackals for Anubis bulls, for the god Apis, even fish and shrews. Sometimes a wealthy family would bring you their beloved pet dog or gazelle, wanting it to be preserved so it could join them in the field of reeds. These were often treated with as much care and expense as a human family member. This part of your job feels different. The deep existential and emotional weight of handling a human body is replaced by a sense of strange, almost absurd reverence. You don't feel the same social taint from handling a dead cat as you do from handling a dead man. The work is still difficult, but it's less psychologically fraught. It does, however, deepen your sense of the Egyptians' all-encompassing faith. Their world was truly magical, a place where the lines between human, animal, and God were blurry. They saw divinity everywhere in the cat, sleeping by the hearth, and the crocodile lurking in the reeds. And your job in all its strange variety was to be the gatekeeper for all of them, ensuring that every soul, regardless of its earthly form, was properly prepared for its journey into eternity. You are a man of low station, an outcast. You are illiterate and own nothing of value. Yet you possess something more valuable and more dangerous than gold. You know the secrets of the most powerful people in Egypt. The dead do not lie, and their bodies tell tales that were carefully concealed in life. In the quiet solitude of the Wabat, with only the silent dead as your companion, you become the unwilling keeper of these truths. When you work on the body of a great general celebrated for his strength and bravery in battle, you are the one who discovers the shriveled, withered leg he kept hidden beneath his robes his entire life. You see the infected wounds that his physicians could not heal, the true, undignified cause of his death that was publicly attributed to a heroic battle wound. You learn that the great hero was in his final days a frail and suffering man. You see the truth behind the carefully constructed public image. When you embalm a high priest, a man revered for his piety and purity, you might find track marks on his arms from the frequent use of opium for pain, a secret vice hidden from his followers. Or you may discover that the queen wife of the pharaoh, praised for her fertility, and the mother of the heir, had a body racked by tumors that would have made childbirth impossible. You realize with a jolt that the royal heir must not be her child at all. These are not just medical facts, they are state secrets. They are pieces of information that could topple dynasties, spark rumors, and undermine the very foundations of power. This knowledge is a terrifying burden. You cannot speak of it. To whom would you tell? Another embalmer? To what end? To tell anyone outside your profession would be suicide. A single whispered word in a tavern about the general's leg or the queen's illness would travel, and it would inevitably be traced back to you. The powerful have long arms, and their solution to silencing a leak is always simple and brutal. And so you lock the secrets away in your mind, burying them deeper than any mummy in a tomb. This secret knowledge changes the way you see the world. When you see the great and powerful parading through the village adorned in their fine linens and jewelry, you no longer feel the same sense of awe or intimidation. You see them not as demigods, but as flawed, vulnerable human beings. You know their physical pains, their hidden illnesses, their secret frailties. You have seen them stripped of all their power and finery, reduced to a naked cold body on your table. This intimate knowledge demystifies them completely. You know that for all their wealth and authority in this life, they are subject to the same decay and the same biological frailties as the poorest farmer. In your workshop, on your table, they are all equal. This secret intimacy creates a strange one-sided relationship. You know more about the nobleman than his own family, but he in life would not have even acknowledged your existence. This imbalance is the story of your life. You are the invisible man who sees everything. You carry the weight of the nation's secrets on your shoulders, a silent observer standing in the shadows, watching the grand play of power, knowing that sooner or later all the actors will end up on your stage. The nobleman's mummy is sealed in its tomb. The rituals are complete. His family has departed, and the silence of the necropolis has returned. For you, the sacred work is over, and the mundane reality of survival takes its place. Now comes the day of payment. Your profession does not earn you coins of silver or gold. Currency is not yet a part of your daily world. Instead, you are paid in the very things that sustain life. A system of barter and rations known as payment in kind. You and your fellow embalmers gather as the scribe from the deceased's estate arrives to settle the account. He is a clean man holding his papyrus scroll in a way that keeps his fine linen robes from touching any of your dusty equipment. He never makes eye contact. He reads from his scroll, his voice formal and detached, listing the goods that have been allocated for the services rendered. The payment is not for you alone, but for the entire workshop, to be divided among the masters, the craftsmen like yourself, the assistants, and the laborers. The list is long, but you know that your personal share will be modest. There are sacks of emmer wheat and barley, the staples of your diet, from which your wife will grind flour to make your daily bread. There are large ceramic jars of beer, thick and nutritious, more of a food than a drink, and smaller, more valuable jars of date wine. There are rations of dried fish from the Nile, salted to last for months. And most importantly, there are jugs of oil. Not the sacred fragrant oils used for the dead, but simple everyday sesame or castor oil for cooking and for fueling the small lamps that provide the only light in your windowless hut. Sometimes, for a particularly wealthy client, the payment is more extravagant. There might be bolts of raw linen, a valuable commodity you can use for your own family's clothing. There could be livestock, a goat that will provide milk or a few chickens. On rare occasions, there might even be tools, a new bronze knife, or a set of chisels, items of great value that would improve the quality of your work. You listen intently as the scribe reads the list, mentally calculating your share, hoping it will be enough to last until the next major payment comes through. Your life is lived in this cycle, a rhythm of feast and famine, tied to the death rites of the rich. When a great man dies, your family eats well for a month. When there is a lull, you tighten your belts and subsist on stored grain and dried fish. There is a deep and bitter irony in this moment. You have just spent months preparing a house of eternity filled with unimaginable luxuries. You personally placed miniature loaves of bread, carved wooden ducks, and jars of the finest honey into the tomb provisions for a single soul's eternal feast. Now you stand here, grateful for a few sacks of raw grain. You have handled amulets of pure gold and lapis lazuli, yet you are overjoyed at the prospect of receiving a new loincloth. The vast cosmic gulf between your client's afterlife and your own mortal life is never more apparent than on payday. The goods are unloaded, and your master divides the shares according to rank and skill. You gather your portion, a sack of wheat on your shoulder, a jug of beer in your hand, and begin the walk back to your hut. The payment is fair for your station. It is enough. But as you walk, you can't help but think of the sealed tomb, a treasure chest locked under the sand. You think of the single gold ring you left on the nobleman's finger, a ring whose value could have fed your entire community for a year. You push the thought from your mind. That is the path to madness and ruin. Your payment is here heavy on your shoulder. It is real, it is honest, and it will allow your family to survive. In a life as precarious as yours, that is the only kind of wealth that truly matters. Your pay of grain and beer is stored away. The memory of the nobleman's face begins to fade, joining the silent gallery of other faces in your mind. The tomb is sealed. It feels like an ending, but in your profession, there are no true endings, only cycles. The rhythm of your life is not linear. It is a circle. It is the great unending loop of death, preservation, and burial. And the day after you are paid for one job, a new one always begins. The eternal loop is the very structure of your existence. It starts with the sound of wailing from the village, a sound that signifies both a family's loss and the continuation of your livelihood. Then comes the procession to the Wabet, the delivery of a new client, a new project. You begin again with the first touch, the purification with the cold water of the Nile. You feel the strange, cold skin, and you are back at the start of the cycle. Then comes the gruesome, methodical work of the interior, the cleansing cut, the removal of the brain, the preservation of the organs in their sacred jars, the careful protection of the heart. Each action is familiar, repeated countless times, yet each body is different, presenting its own unique challenges. Then the loop enters its long, quiet phase, the 40 days of the natron bath. This is the period of patient waiting and preparation, the time you spend mending tools, preparing linen, and working on other bodies that are at different stages of their own cycles. The Wabet is a place of overlapping timelines. In one corner, a body has just been brought in. In another, a body lies under its mountain of salt 20 days into its transformation. In the main area, you might be meticulously wrapping a body that has just finished its 40-day wait. You are a master of managing these intersecting cycles, a juggler of the dead. After the long wait, the loop accelerates again. The wrapping, the anointing, the placing of amulets, and the mask. The ceremony of the opening of the mouth. The final journey to the tomb. You watch the stone door being sealed, and you know you have completed one more rotation. You have successfully guided another soul from the world of the living to the threshold of the land of the dead. You have done your part. You wash your hands, you clean your tools, you collect your pay. You rest for a night, and then the next morning you hear the wailing again. The loop begins anew. This endless repetition has a profound effect on your mind. It blurs the passage of time. The seasons change, the Nile floods and recedes. Pharaohs live and die, but your work remains the same. The bodies change, the faces are different, but the process is eternal. This constancy is both a comfort and a curse. It is a comfort because you are a master of your craft. The repetition has given you a skill and knowledge that few possess. You know every step, every prayer, every contingency. You move with a quiet confidence, your hands guided by the memory of 1,000 repetitions. There are no surprises. But it is also a curse. The lack of variation can be mind-numbing. The work is physically and emotionally draining, and the prospect of it stretching endlessly before you. The same tasks repeated until your own death can lead to a sense of profound weariness. You feel like a cog in a great cosmic machine, a machine that processes the dead for eternity. Sometimes, you look at the peaceful, inert face of a mummy you have just completed, and you feel a flash of envy. His struggles are over. His journey is about to begin. Yours is to remain here in the workshop, to turn the great wheel of the eternal loop over and over and over again until the day another embalmer performs the first touch on your own cold skin. For over a century, the modern world has been captivated by a chilling idea, the curse of the mummy. It's a story we all know, whispered in schoolyards and sensationalized in films. The tale begins with the dramatic discovery of a sealed tomb untouched for over 3,000 years. A brave archaeologist, against the warnings of superstitious locals, breaks the seal. Inside, he finds unimaginable treasures, but he has also unleashed a dreadful power. A curse inscribed in hieroglyphs on the tomb wall promises swift vengeance upon any who disturb the pharaoh's eternal sleep. Soon after, members of the expedition begin to die under mysterious circumstances. A sudden fever, a strange accident, a descent into madness. The mummy's curse has struck. This dramatic tale paints the ancient embalmers and priests not just as artisans, but as powerful sorcerers capable of weaving magical hexes that could last for millennia. But the truth, like your work itself, is more mundane, more biological, and arguably more fascinating. The real curse that lay waiting in those tombs was not one of supernatural magic, but of microscopic life. A sealed tomb is a perfect incubator. For thousands of years it is a closed environment, dark still, and left entirely to itself. Any bacteria, fungal spores, or molds that were present on the funeral offerings, the wooden furniture, or even within the mummy itself, had millennia to grow and multiply undisturbed. Species of molds like Aspergillus niger or Aspergillus flavus could thrive covering surfaces in a fine toxic dust. When that seal was broken and the first explorers stepped inside, they were breathing in a concentrated cloud of potentially pathogenic spores their immune systems had never encountered. The sudden illnesses, the respiratory failures, many of these can be explained as a natural consequence of inhaling ancient toxic mold. The true irony is that this curse was not something aimed at future tomb robbers. It was a daily reality for you, the embalmer. You worked in an environment filled with the raw materials of this biological threat. You handled diseased bodies, you were exposed to bacteria, and you worked in enclosed spaces with poor ventilation. The occupational hazards you faced, the risk of infection from a cut, the lung ailments from breathing in dust and mold, were the real original curse. The mysterious deaths of modern explorers were simply a faint echo of the dangers you and your colleagues faced every single day. The legend of the mummy's curse takes the mundane, chronic suffering of the ancient worker and transforms it into a spectacular supernatural horror story. The greatest danger in the tomb was never a magical hex, but the simple, patient, and invisible power of decay, the very force you dedicated your entire life to fighting. Given the absolute importance of mummification for securing a place in the afterlife, it's natural to assume that the men who performed this vital service were themselves powerful and highly respected figures. The popular imagination pictures the embalmer as a high priest, a man of immense learning and spiritual authority, his face hidden in shadows, his hands weaving spells as he performs his holy work. We imagine a figure revered by society, someone the pharaoh himself would consult, a man whose closeness to the gods and the dead gave him a special feared and respected status. This image projects a sense of priestly power onto the role, assuming that such a sacred outcome must be the work of a sacred and celebrated man. This could not be further from the truth. Your reality, as an embalmer, or WT in the ancient language, was that of a skilled craftsman, but a social outcast. You were not a priest. The true priests, the Wabi priests, who were defined by their purity, worked in the temples, and would never dream of contaminating themselves by handling a corpse. The highest-ranking cleric at any funerary rite was the Sem priest, who performed the clean, final, and most prestigious rituals, like the opening of the mouth ceremony. He wore the leopard skin and recited the holy words, but he would only touch the completed mummy, the pure and finished object. You were the man who did the work that made his clean ritual possible. Your role was essential, but it was also polluting. The act of opening the body, of handling the internal organs, of dealing with the physical realities of death, placed you in a permanent state of ritual impurity. This is why your workshop was located on the edge of the desert, far from the town center. It's why you lived in a segregated community with others who worked with the dead. You were a walking, talking paradox, the creator of ritual purity, who was himself permanently impure. Society needed your skills desperately, but it wanted nothing to do with you as a person. Your status was far closer to that of a butcher or a tanner, other professions that dealt with the messy disassembly of bodies, than to that of a priest. This social reality is the core of your difficult existence. While the family of the nobleman might thank you with tears in their eyes for your beautiful work, they would not invite you into their home for a meal. The scribe who pays you your rations avoids your gaze and holds his robes away from you. The power you hold is a technical one, a knowledge of anatomy and chemistry. It is not a spiritual or social power. You hold the deepest secrets of the elite, yet you cannot speak to them. You are the engine of the entire funerary industry, yet you exist on its lowest, most reviled rung. The true Egyptian embalmer was not a celebrated priest dwelling in a holy temple, but a blue-collar, skilled artisan living in a dusty workshop, forever tainted by the sacred, dirty work of his hands. The magic of cinema and the allure of Gothic novels have given us a very specific image of the mummy, a perfectly preserved human being, seemingly just asleep, ready to be awakened at a moment's notice. We imagine that the embalmers had a secret magical science that could halt time, leaving the skin, the features, and the form of the deceased utterly unchanged, a flawless snapshot of their living self. This idea is central to the horror of the mummy, the notion that the creature that shuffles forth from its tomb is not a monster, but the person themselves, trapped in their own body for millennia. We believe the goal of mummification was to create a perfect life-like double that the soul could easily recognize and re-inhabit. The physical reality of your work, however, was not one of gentle preservation, but of controlled, purposeful destruction. Your goal was not to create a lifelike statue. It was to create an indestructible, eternal vessel. And this process was brutal. The first act was to destroy the brain, scrambling it and pulling it out through the nose because it was considered useless and prone to rapid decay. The next act was to remove all the internal organs, save the heart, leaving the body a hollow shell. The 40 days in natron did not leave the skin soft and supple. It turned it into a hard, shrunken, blackened leather. The body that emerged from the salt bath was a skeletal, desiccated husk that looked almost nothing like the person it once was. Your job was then to rebuild, not to preserve what was left. You stuffed the hollow cavity with linen and sawdust to give it a semblance of its original shape. You padded the shrunken muscles. You wrapped the entire thing in hundreds of yards of bandages, creating a new, idealized human form. The final layer of this construction was the mask, which was not a realistic portrait, but a perfected godlike face. The end product was not the man himself, but a complex, symbolic statue made of linen resin and salt, with a core of desiccated human remains. The soul was not meant to recognize the man's lifelike face, but to recognize this new permanent and ritually pure eternal body that you had constructed for it. The quality of this process also varied tremendously. For every perfectly preserved royal mummy, like Tutankhamun, there are hundreds of others that are little more than a jumble of bones inside a wrapping of bandages. Mummification was not a perfect science. Sometimes the natron didn't work properly. Sometimes the evisceration was done poorly. For poorer clients, the process was so abbreviated that it offered little more preservation than a simple burial in the hot desert sand. The beautiful timeless mummies that we see in museums are the exceptions, the deluxe packages that represent the absolute pinnacle of your art. They are not the norm. Your work was not about freezing a person in time. It was about taking the raw, decaying material of a human body and transforming it into a new stable and symbolic object, an indestructible house for the soul. As you step back and look at the entire system you are a part of, you begin to see it not just as a religion, but as a powerful and intricate mechanism of social control. The Egyptian obsession with the afterlife and the incredibly complex and expensive path required to navigate it successfully was not just a matter of personal faith. It was the very foundation upon which the power of the pharaoh and the temple priests was built. You and your humble workshop are an essential gear in this vast machine that keeps society in order, running on the twin fuels of faith and fear. The fear is the most potent tool. The descriptions of the underworld in the Book of the Dead are terrifying. It is a place of monstrous demons, fiery lakes, and a final judgment that could lead to your utter annihilation. The only way to survive this ordeal is through the correct application of magic spells and rituals. And who holds the monopoly on this magical knowledge? The priests. Who is the chief intermediary between the people and the gods, the pharaoh? By creating such a terrifying afterlife and then positioning themselves as the only ones who can provide the solution, the ruling class ensures the obedience and loyalty of the populace. To question the authority of a priest or to defy the will of the pharaoh becomes more than just a political act. It becomes an act of spiritual suicide. It is risking not just your mortal life, but your eternal soul. This fear ensures that the temples are filled with offerings and that the pharaoh's commands are obeyed without question. Your work is a constant physical reminder of these stakes. Every mummy you produce is a testament to the fact that the afterlife is a real and dangerous place that requires the official state-sanctioned methods of passage. The system also brilliantly reinforces the social hierarchy. The fact that the quality of your eternal life is directly tied to the wealth you possess in your mortal one is a powerful message. It tells the poor farmer that his humble station in this life will be mirrored by a humble station in the next. It tells the nobleman that his power and privilege are not temporary, but eternal. This discourages social mobility and rebellion. It encourages people to accept their lot in life because the social structure is presented not as a man-made system, but as a reflection of a divine cosmic order. Your workshop is a microcosm of this. The nobleman receives the deluxe package with the finest linen and a golden mask. The farmer receives a simple salt and wrap burial. You see the class system of Egypt laid bare on your embalming tables. You are not just preserving bodies, you are preserving the social pyramid itself. The paradox of your existence being simultaneously essential and shunned feels unique and deeply personal. The sting of being avoided in the village, the loneliness of your segregated life, feels like a punishment reserved for you and your colleagues. But if you could look forward in time, you would see that you are not an anomaly. You are the ancient ancestor of a timeless social contract. You are the original performer of a dirty job, and the complex feelings society has towards you, a mixture of necessity, gratitude, fear, and disgust, will be mirrored in countless professions for thousands of years to come. Think of the man who will in the distant future collect the garbage from people's homes in the dead of night. He performs a vital service, preventing the spread of disease and keeping the city clean. Yet he is socially invisible. People avoid his smell. They look down on his profession, and they prefer not to think about what he does with the things they throw away. He, like you, handles the unwanted refuse of society so that others can live a clean and orderly life. He, too, is an outcast, essential, but unseen. Think of the mortician or funeral director of the future. They will be professionals, educated and respected in their own way, but they will still occupy that same uncomfortable space that you do. They will be the experts that everyone needs in their moment of grief, the calm and steady hand that guides families through the terrifying logistics of death. People will be grateful for their service, but they will still be a person whose business is death. Friends will still make awkward jokes. At parties, conversation will still halt when their profession is mentioned. You will be a living reminder of mortality, and society will keep them at a polite but firm emotional distance. This pattern repeats for the sanitation worker who maintains the sewers beneath the city, the crime scene cleaner who erases the brutal evidence of violence, the butcher who disassembles animals for food. All of these people do work that is fundamentally necessary for the health, safety, and psychological comfort of society, and all of them are in some way set apart. Their work requires them to confront the things that the rest of society pays to not have to see: waste, decay, filth, and death. In understanding this, you can see your own life in a new context. Your social isolation is not a punishment for a personal failing. It is the price that society has always demanded from those who do its dirty work. It is a form of hypocrisy, perhaps, but also a form of self-preservation. People shun you, not because they hate you, but because they fear the realities you represent. You have been given the task of standing guard on the border between order and chaos, between purity and decay. And those who guard such borders are never truly a part of the kingdom they protect. Anyone looking at your life's work, at the immense resources and energy your culture pours into its funerary rites, would likely come to a simple conclusion: the Egyptians are obsessed with death. Your entire civilization seems to be built around graves, tombs, and the dead. The Great Pyramids are nothing but tombs. The sacred texts are guidebooks for the deceased. Your own profession, a cornerstone of the economy, produces nothing for the living. It would be easy to see this as a morbid, gloomy culture fixated on its own end. But as you stand back and look at the whole picture, you realize this conclusion is wrong. It is the exact opposite of the truth. Your culture is not obsessed with death. It is obsessed with life. Violently, profoundly, and unshakably obsessed with it. Every single action you perform in your workshop is not an act in celebration of death, but an act in defiance of it. Why go to the immense trouble of removing the organs, drying the body in salt for 40 days, and wrapping it in hundreds of yards of linen? It is a desperate, monumental effort to deny death its victory. It is a refusal to accept that the end is the end. It is a statement written in flesh and bone and cloth that life is so powerful, so precious that it must be made to continue, even when the heart has stopped beating. Look at the tombs. A morbid culture would build a simple grave, a place of sorrow and memory. But your people build a house of eternity. You fill it not with symbols of death, but with all the things needed for a vibrant life. You place tables and chairs for relaxing game boards, for entertainment, cosmetic palettes, for beauty, and piles of food and wine for feasting. The murals on the walls do not depict scenes of decay and suffering. They show the deceased hunting in the marshes, overseeing a bountiful harvest, and enjoying a banquet with his family. The tomb is a magical engine designed to perpetuate the best moments of life forever. It is a denial of loss, a furious testament to the joy of living. This reframes your entire profession. You are not a merchant of death. You are a craftsman of continuity. You are a technician of hope. The family that comes to you in their grief is not asking you to help them mourn their loss. They are hiring you to ensure that there is no true loss. Your grim and messy work, the hooks, the knives, the salt, the resin, is the necessary, earthy foundation for the most beautiful and hopeful belief imaginable, that life is stronger than death. It is the ultimate affirmation. You are not serving the dead. You are serving your culture's profound, unyielding, and absolute love for life. And that is a sacred calling indeed. And so the story of your life as an embalmer unfolds a relentless cycle of death and duty on the shores of the Nile. For decades, you toiled in the twilight of the Wabbit, a ghost in your own society. Your hands, stained with the sacred and the profane, became instruments in a great war against time. You were a craftsman, a surgeon, a chemist, a priest, an artist, and a secret keeper. You battled the relentless forces of decay with salt resin and linen, transforming the fragile, corruptible flesh of mortals into something you hoped would be eternal. You were the silent, essential gear in a grand cultural machine, a machine powered by a civilization's profound terror of being forgotten. You stood guard at the gateway between the worlds, a master of the rites of passage. Yet you yourself were an outcast, forever barred from the clean, simple world of the living. You devoted your mortal life to the creation of immortal life for others, a walking, breathing paradox. Your own name will never be carved in stone, but your work populates the vast, silent cities of the dead, a hidden legacy of craftsmanship buried beneath the sands. But what became of your life's work? What was the ultimate fate of the thousands of perfect eternal vessels you so painstakingly crafted? Here is the final cruelest twist in the embalmer's story. Despite the magical spells, the powerful amulets, the tons of stone piled high to create the tombs, your work was not in the end eternal. The eternity you labored to build was a fragile dream, shattered by a force more powerful than any god or demon human greed. Almost every tomb, from the grandest pyramid to the simplest nobleman's grave, was eventually robbed. The sacred seals were broken. The stone lids of sarcophagi were smashed open, and the mummies you created were torn apart by thieves, searching for a single gold ring or a lapis lazuli charm. Your art was desecrated for trinkets. In later ages, the destruction continued. The bodies you preserved were ground into powder to make a pigment called mummy brown for European painters, or were bizarrely used as medicine. The linen bandages you wrapped with such care were sold off to make paper. The great eternal project, the central obsession of your culture, ended not in a glorious resurrection, but in desecration, commerce, and dust. The quiet, hopeless truth is that most of what you did was in the long arc of history for nothing. And now, as this long history comes to a close, the final question turns to you lying here, listening in the quiet of your room. If you were born into that world, if you were chosen for that life, could you have done it? Could you have stood your ground on that first day? A child surrounded by the silent dead? Could your hands perform the cleansing cut, your stomach withstand the intimate work of evisceration? Could you have breathed the dry stinging air of the natron day after day, your skin cracking and your lungs burning? Could you have endured the profound loneliness, the sting of being shunned by your community, the weight of being perpetually unclean? Could you have resisted the temptation of theft when your own family was hungry? It is easy for us to look back with fascination, but to truly live that life required a strength and a resilience that is almost impossible to comprehend. You have been a witness to the hardship, the artistry, and the sorrow. So ask yourself, in the quiet of this moment, could you have survived? Think for a moment of the simple comforts that surround you, the softness of your bed, the clean, fresh air you are breathing, the quiet hum of electricity, or the sound of gentle rain outside your window. Think of the simple dignity of your own privacy, the freedom to walk through your town without being feared or shunned. These small everyday things are blessings so vast, so profound, they would have been unimaginable to the man whose life you have just shared. He knew only the hard floor or a straw pallet, the air thick with salt and decay, the constant judgment of others. The clean water that flows freely from your tap would have been a luxury reserved for purifying the dead. The quiet anonymity you enjoy was a freedom he could never possess. Your life, with all its own modern struggles and anxieties, would have looked to him like the field of reeds itself, a paradise of impossible comfort and peace. But that world is fading now. The sharp chemical scent of the natron is gone. The heavy, sweet smell of myrrh and resin is dissolving into the night air. The sound of the lector priests chanting has fallen silent. The desert wind no longer whispers against the walls of the wobet. The flickering light of the oil lamps has been extinguished. All of it is receding, pulling back into the distant past, like a tide going out, leaving only the quiet shore of the present moment. Feel the weight of your own body, not the light, desiccated body of a mummy, but your own warm and living, sinking comfortably into your mattress. Become aware of the gentle rise and fall of your own chest. Your journey to that ancient and dusty land is over. You are returning home. You're not there anymore. You're here, safe, quiet, breathing. You are in your own bed, in your own room, in your own time. The sand of the Egyptian desert is thousands of miles and thousands of years away. There is no work to be done. There are no rituals to perform. There is only the gentle darkness, the comfort of your blankets, and the easy rhythm of your own breath. You have faced the dead, and you have returned to the soft, simple, wonderful reality of being alive. Let your mind be as still and quiet as a sealed tomb, but one filled not with anxiety or fear, but with deep, peaceful rest. Let your thoughts drift away. There is nothing left to do now but sleep.